Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today, and I'm excited about this one. We're tackling Freeman Dyson.
Oh, yeah, Dyson.
Yeah, a theoretical physicist,
Yeah.
mathematician, and honestly, just someone who wasn't afraid to shake things up, even in the world of science, which, can be pretty rigid sometimes.
What strikes me about Dyson is his reach
Mm-hmm.
across so many fields.
Mm-hmm.
You think quantum mechanics and then astrophysics, even climate change,
Yeah.
nuclear weapons. It's like he could see these threads connecting everything that others just missed.
Okay, so for this deep dive, we've got biographies, his work, his ideas, the whole 9 yards. But if our listener walks away with one thing,
Yeah.
what should it be?
I think to appreciate the power of just thinking differently,
Mm-hmm.
looking at the world sideways.
Mm-hmm.
Not being afraid to challenge those assumptions, even if it makes some people uncomfortable.
I like that. And Dyson, he definitely made some people uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
But before we get to the controversies, let's start at the beginning. What kind of kid grows up to become Freeman Dyson?
Okay, picture this. A 4-year-old trying to calculate how many atoms are in the sun.
What?
Not your typical childhood, right? But that was Dyson. The sources paint this picture of a young kid obsessed with numbers, the solar system, big questions, even then.
Like, he was born a cosmologist.
Right.
But even with that kind of mind, his path wasn't exactly normal, was it?
You're talking about the doctorate, right, or the lack of one.
Mm-hmm.
He did amazing at Winchester, scholarship to Trinity College at 15.
Wow.
All the signs of this brilliant academic career. But the PhD, never pursued it, even though his work was on par with, the giants of physics.
So he's revolutionizing physics without the official stamp of approval.
Pretty much.
That's got to be the ultimate rebel move in academia.
It shows you how his mind just didn't fit in those boxes, and his work on QED, quantum electrodynamics.
Right.
Perfect example. So late 1940s, you've got these two theories of QED that seem totally incompatible. One using Feynman's diagrams, the other super mathematical, by Schwinger and Tominaga.
Wait, so 2 ways to explain the same force of nature?
Yeah.
Seems a bit much, even for physicists.
It was a real standoff. But Dyson, with his mathematical genius, he could see the link. He proved they were just different sides of the same coin.
So he was the bridge, connecting 2 things that seemed totally separate.
Exactly. And it was huge. Physicists could finally understand each other. It led to lasers, transistors.
Wow.
Stuff we rely on today.
So not only was he a genius, but he helped other geniuses reach their potential.
That's a good way to put it.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. And, I wonder if his wartime experience played a role in all this. He was assigned to RAF Bomber Command during World War II.
So from abstract theories to real-world problems, was he figuring out the best way to do bombing runs?
He was developing analytical methods, calculating the ideal density of bomber formations to, minimize losses. Dangerous work, very different from academia.
From theoretical physics to the realities of war, that's quite a shift. Do you think it changed how he thought?
It's hard to say for sure, but maybe. Maybe that wartime pressure instilled in him a very practical problem-solving mindset. He always seemed to want solutions, even when dealing with these really big theoretical concepts.
Which brings us to one of his most famous, and let's be honest, kind of out there ideas.
Oh, yeah.
The Dyson Sphere. But before we go full sci-fi, can we talk about Project Orion?
Orion.
Nuclear-powered spaceships. That's the stuff of childhood dreams.
Oh, it was bold. Late 1950s, early 60s, this project was all about using nuclear pulses to propel spacecraft. Imagine riding a series of controlled explosions into space.
Sounds a bit risky.
A little bit.
But it's that same problem solving, right? If regular rockets can't get us to deep space, why not go nuclear?
Dyson loved the potential of Orion for deep space travel. Sadly, it got shelved in '65. Partly because of the Partial Test Ban Treaty, which, ironically, Dyson supported.
So the peacemaker won out over the space explorer. It's like he was always wrestling with this idea, the good and the bad of science,
Absolutely. And that same tension is there with the Dyson Sphere. He proposed it in a 1960 paper.
Okay, so for those who don't know, what exactly is a Dyson Sphere?
Well, it was a thought experiment. Dyson was thinking, what happens when a civilization gets so advanced that their energy needs outstrip their planet's resources?
You've outgrown solar panels and windmills. What's the next step on the cosmic energy ladder?
Dyson said maybe they build a massive structure, a sphere, or more likely, a bunch of connected structures around their star. capturing a huge chunk of its energy.
Hold on, you're talking about enclosing a star? That's insane. What would that even look like?
It's almost impossible to picture. But the point wasn't to design a real megastructure.
Right.
It was to explore the potential of really advanced tech and maybe how we could detect those civilizations from Earth.
So it's like a cosmic fingerprint. Hey, someone's been messing with their star. And that's why it's so captivating, right? Especially for sci-fi.
It makes you think about civilizations so advanced they've mastered their own little corner of the universe.
We're nowhere near that level, obviously. But it shows how Dyson thought, right?
Oh, yeah.
Outside the box. Imagining things most of us wouldn't even dream of.
He was a visionary. Always looking ahead, even if it seemed like pure science fiction at the time.
Yeah.
And that leads us to another area where he wasn't afraid to think differently, to go against the grain, even if it meant stirring up some controversy.
You're talking about his views on climate change. Now things are getting interesting.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really interesting. So Dyson on climate change. It was unconventional, to say the least. He knew humans were warming the planet.
Yeah.
But he didn't see it as this doomsday scenario like a lot of others.
So not a denier, but not exactly hitting the panic button either. What was his logic?
Well, one thing he argued was that higher CO2 levels might actually be good for some things.
Like what?
Like plant growth and therefore agriculture.
Wait, more CO2, more plants?
Yeah.
So a little global warming could actually mean more food. That's a bold claim. What was he basing that on?
He pointed to the fact that plants need CO2 to grow, right? So a warmer Earth, more CO2 could mean a greener planet.
Okay.
Maybe even better for agriculture, especially in places struggling to grow food.
Interesting. But that put him at odds with a lot of climate scientists, didn't it?
It did. Especially those who were really concerned about rising temperatures and all that. Dyson also wasn't sold on those climate models.
Really?
Yeah, he thought they were too simplified, didn't capture all the complexities of how Earth's climate really works.
So he's questioning both the problem and the way we're measuring it.
He said there were too many unknowns in those models, and that all this focus on cutting CO2 emissions was distracting us from other, more urgent global problems.
So not denying climate change, more like questioning how bad it would be and the solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
That must have made him unpopular with the environmental movement.
It did. But Dyson was convinced that humans are adaptable. We're innovators. We'd find solutions to climate challenges without, completely overhauling everything about how we get energy. He even had these ideas for genetically engineered Dyson trees.
Dyson trees, what, like giant redwoods or something?
Not exactly. He imagined plants, maybe even put in comets, that could just suck up massive amounts of CO2 from the atmosphere, like natural carbon vacuums.
That's definitely thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
But people probably dismissed it as too sci-fi, right?
He did.
Yeah.
But it shows you Dyson's faith in human ingenuity. And we see that again in his work on nuclear weapons, which is another really fascinating part of his story.
Nuclear-powered spaceships, climate change. Now we're getting into nukes. This deep dive is quite the ride.
It is. So Dyson's involvement with nuclear issues, it kind of goes back to World War II, when he was with RAF Bomber Command.
Right.
But he kept thinking about it long after the war was over.
I remember reading that he was asked to analyze using tactical nuclear weapons during the Vietnam War.
Must have been a tough thing to do.
It was. Late 1960s, he was an advisor, and they asked him to look at the pros and cons of using smaller nukes in Vietnam. His report, which is public now, basically concluded that using them would be a bad idea, even from a purely military standpoint.
So even in a war he disagreed with, he was applying this very logical approach to nuclear weapons.
Dyson believed in being clear-headed and objective, even when it was about something really emotional. He wanted to cut through all the noise and just see the potential outcomes,
It's interesting how his wartime experience seems to connect to his views on both climate change and nuclear weapons. He definitely wasn't naive about how destructive technology could be.
Not at all. But he also believed humans could find solutions, avoid the worst-case scenarios. That belief in our potential is key to understanding him.
So people called him a contrarian, but it all came from a place of caring about the future of humanity.
Absolutely. He challenged the status quo not to stir up trouble.
But because he truly believed it was the only way to find the best path forward.
It seems like he was always looking for that balance. Technological progress, but also the ethical side of things.
You got it. And that brings us to his bigger picture views on science, religion, the future of humanity. These are things he wrote about a lot, spoke about
Right.
often going beyond just one specific area of study.
Okay, so we've covered his early life, his breakthroughs in physics, his controversial takes on climate change and nuclear weapons, these wild ideas about Dyson spheres and space travel. And now we're getting philosophical. This is way more than a science lesson.
It is. And in these areas, you really see how he could connect ideas that seem totally unrelated and challenge assumptions that most people just accept without thinking.
All right, I'm ready for the philosophical side of Freeman Dyson. What did he have to say about the big stuff, like science and faith?
On science and religion, Dyson had a very unique perspective. He called himself a Christian,
Okay.
but he was very open in questioning about his faith.
Not your typical churchgoer, then.
No, not really. He saw science and religion as two different ways of looking at the same universe, each giving us a partial but still valuable understanding.
So he saw the good in both, but wasn't afraid to question either one.
That's it. He would often criticize what he saw as dogma in both science and religion, saying that both need to be open to questioning and change. He thought a healthy dose of skepticism was crucial for making progress, no matter what you're studying.
That's a pretty refreshing perspective, especially these days when science and religion are often portrayed as being on opposite sides.
Right. He was comfortable with the mystery, the complexity of both, knowing that neither one has all the answers.
And that open-mindedness, it extended to his views on the future, too. I know he was really into biotechnology and genetic engineering. What did he think about how those fields would impact humanity down the road?
Dyson saw a lot of potential in biotech and genetic engineering. He thought they could solve some of the world's biggest problems. He was particularly interested in how they could help with poverty and environmental issues.
So he wasn't just focused on the futuristic sci-fi stuff.
No, he was thinking about the practical side. Things like creating crops that could grow in really tough conditions, or using genetically modified organisms to clean up pollution.
It's like he was this techno-optimist, but with a heart, you know? He saw tech not just as a way to push boundaries, but as a tool to actually make life better for people.
That's a great way to describe it. He believed in human ingenuity to solve problems and build a better future. And tech was a big part of that. But he also knew we had to use it wisely, ethically.
He was ahead of his time in a lot of ways. Wasn't he also a big advocate for what he called green technologies?
He was. And he contrasted those with gray technologies, which were all about heavy industry and reliance on fossil fuels. For Dyson, green technologies were more biological, like his genetically engineered plants to absorb CO2 or produce biofuels.
So basically using nature itself to solve our problems.
Exactly. He saw the natural world as this huge source of potential solutions, just waiting for us to unlock them through science and innovation.
Makes you wish we could ask him what he thinks about the world today. Climate change is getting more urgent all the time. Although knowing Dyson, he'd probably have some surprising take on it.
Well, for sure. He was never one to shy away from challenging the conventional wisdom.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job exploring the mind of Freeman Dyson today. What would you say is his most important legacy?
His never-ending curiosity, that willingness to grapple with the tough questions, even if it meant challenging his own beliefs or going against the crowd. He was a true maverick, and his life shows us the power of thinking differently.
That's a great point. He never stopped learning, never stopped questioning, never stopped imagining what the future could hold.
And maybe that's the biggest lesson we can take from his life. To be like Dyson, always question, always learn, and never be afraid to think outside the box.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the amazing mind of Freeman Dyson. It's amazing how Dyson could be so into both, you know? The hard science, like physics, but also those bigger questions of faith and the future. Like, they were all connected somehow.
He really did see it that way. Separating science and religion into these neat little categories, he thought that was a mistake. They're both trying to make sense of the universe, you know, our place in it.
It makes you wonder what he'd say about some of the arguments we see today, where it's like science versus religion.
I think he'd tell everyone to just chill out a bit.
Yeah.
Remember that there's so much we don't understand. The universe is full of mysteries, and neither science nor religion have all the answers.
He probably wouldn't have much patience for dogma, right? Whether it's from scientists or religious leaders?
No, not at all. He was always pushing for a more open mind, questioning, exploring, being willing to change your mind. That's how we move forward, no matter what field you're in.
And that brings us back to his optimism about the future. He truly believed that humanity could overcome anything.
He did. And technology, used the right way, was key to that. Remember his ideas about green technologies, harnessing nature to solve problems like climate change.
Right, like technology and nature working together, not against each other.
Exactly. Nature was this incredible source of inspiration for him. He believed that by studying it, understanding it, we could find solutions to so many of our problems.
Makes you wish he was still here to see how some of those ideas are starting to take hold now. Biomimicry, sustainable technologies. It's like we're finally catching up to some of his visions.
It does feel that way. And who knows what other breakthroughs are coming. Maybe someone listening right now will pick up where Dyson left off, come up with the next big idea that changes everything.
Maybe they'll even do it without a doctorate, just like him.
That would be a fitting tribute. He never let a lack of a degree limit his thinking or his impact on the world.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the mind of Freeman Dyson, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will remember?
I hope they remember that it's okay to be different, to question what everyone else believes, to imagine things that others might think are impossible, because sometimes those are the ideas that lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
Well said. Freeman Dyson's life shows us that the most important journeys are often the ones that take us off the well-worn path. And who knows, maybe by embracing that spirit of exploration, we'll all discover something incredible along the way.
Absolutely. Keep asking those questions, keep exploring, and never lose faith in humanity's power to create a better future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds open and stay curious.